Welcome to the Ask Your Mentor podcast from Dementia Researcher and Alzheimer's Research UK, where mentees interview their mentors to hear about their careers, experiences, and to find out what makes them tick.
Hello, and welcome to the second show in the series of the Ask Your Mentor podcast. I'm Rebecca Williams. I'm a PhD student at the Cognition and Brain Sciences unit in Cambridge, and I specialise in fronto-temporal dementia. But today I'm swapping my usual mentoring session and turning the spotlight onto the career of my brilliant mentor, Dr. Martina Bocchetta, who is not only a lecturer in the Centre for Cognitive and Clinical Neuroscience at the Department of Psychology at Brunel University in London, but has also generously given up her time to help me out in my studies. So Martina and I were matched through the Alzheimer's Research UK mentoring programme, which is a fantastic free scheme helping early career researchers to grow their skills, hopefully make better decisions and gain new perspectives on their career. So today it's not about me and my career, but all about Martina and hers. So I'd like to offer a very warm welcome to my incredible guest and mentor, Dr. Martina Bocchetta.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone who is either listening or watching us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
You're more than welcome.
So, these shows are all about recognising that there's no such thing as a standard career path. So we start each one by asking our mentors to take us through their CV, just like you would in a job interview, but hopefully without any of the really difficult questions. So we're going to start by going through each role and discuss career moves, how these came about, some of the thought processes maybe that were going on at the time, as well as achievements and lessons to take away from each role. So Martina, I'm going to paint the scene for you. It's 2012. Shinya Yamanaka has just won the Nobel Prize for his discovery of induced pluripotent stem cells. Barack Obama has just won a second term, and you move from Padua to Brescia ahead of your PhD. So let's dive straight into the good stuff. Did you know at that stage what you wanted to do with your life?
So first of all, same level of importance like Nobel Prize and Barack Obama and me moving to Brescia, like it was all over the news and very important happening. But anyway, so at the time, to be honest with you, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I only knew that I was about to embark on an opportunity of doing a PhD. And I didn't really knew what that meant. I thought, it's going to be study something for 3 years, which is great. I'm up for studying, I'm up for learning. But I didn't quite realize what was the difference between, working and doing a project as perhaps as a research assistant, which is what I was doing before, and actually leading on a project and doing something that was mine and new skills to develop. So absolutely no idea.
So did you enjoy that shift, like you say, kind of taking charge of a project? Was your PhD something that you enjoyed doing? Were there any challenges?
It was something that now that few years have passed, I would probably have done differently. But I thought it was an amazing experience and a great opportunity. So the thing that I could study and really develop what was my very own area of research, I think was just a great opportunity. And on top of that, I had the amazing chance of coming to UCL, University College London in the UK, as a visiting student. So that really opened a few doors, and the chance of exploring a new country and learning what someone else was doing in a very important centers was just fantastic.
Yeah, so you mentioned this idea of kind of ideas being yours for the first time. And I think it's a lot of things PhD students experience is trying to settle on that one idea to pursue one or two. So how did you kind of go about that process of deciding what you wanted your PhD to be focused on now that you had that control?
So you kind of start from billions of different ideas, and then you want to do everything. And then when you talk to your supervisor or to your kind of senior colleague, then they were like, it's too much. You need to narrow it down. No, but I think I can do everything. No, really, trust me. So it's some sort of listening to people who are supervising you, your mentor, or people who have definitely more experience than you, and try to, well, it's going to be about trials and error anyway, because many of us are really stubborn. So I went on doing a number of things, and then, some ended up not being exactly finishing stuff. But it's sort of trying and writing down this idea, then checking with others, getting as many feedbacks as possible, and discussing with others.
Yeah, great. And like I said, I remember reading a paper called "It's a PhD, Not a Nobel Prize," which was really helpful. And just one of the benefits of having a mentor through the Alzheimer's Research UK mentoring scheme is that extra source of feedback. So you mentioned that then during your PhD, you made that jump to London as a visiting student. So what prompted the move? How was it difficult settling into a new country?
So at that time, ages ago, we were in Brescia. We were one of the recruiting center of a project that was just starting. And this project is the Genetic Fronto-temporal Initiative, led by Professor Jonathan Rohr at UCL. And thanks to this collaboration, there was this idea of, you can come to the leading centers of the project and just, start talking and learning a little bit more about frontotemporal dementia and, spend 12 months with us. So I said, of course, I'm going to do that. So it was supposed to be 12 months. I fell in love with the place, and with the group and with everything that was happening in Green Square. So the 12 months became 18, and I had to eventually go back to finish the PhD. And was just fantastic. So the opportunity to meet with other people and see how things are done in different groups was really eye-opening and just a great opportunity. I was so motivating and so enthusiastic that I didn't really feel like the difference or was not anything horrible or, something that made me regret my choice. If I really have to think about it, the only thing that was sort of a shock was the very first time that I went to a supermarket, just landed in the UK, and I found pasta in a tin. And that's a bit too much. I need to adjust to this. Apart from that, I'm surviving. It's nearly 9 years now that I'm in the UK, so I think I'm managing all right.
I love that. Biggest shock to the system, pasta in a tin. I don't think any of us can get over that. So you went back to Brescia, completed your PhD, and that's kind of it. You're on this academic path. So can you take us through what happened next?
Yeah. So when I was about to finish and kind of writing up, they actually offered me a permanent position in Italy, but I really wanted to go back to the UK because I felt like there was so much more that I wanted to learn and so many more opportunity. And I felt like the group and the initiative and the project, it was, I felt like I had to be part of that, and everything was starting there. And I said, I really want to be there. So I had a conversation with my great supervisor at UCL, and I said, can I go back? Do you think there be opportunity or something for me to kind of join the group as a postdoc? And they said, maybe, you can think about writing a fellowship, but they might have some opportunities. So I did write fellowship. I did write 3 of them. None of them got funded, yay. But there was an opening position, so I applied, and thankfully I managed to get this post. So I was 2 years as a postdoc in the group there. And so one of the things then that happened was I did apply it again in 2019, if I remember well, to another fellowship. And I did get it, which was great. And if I look back and I think about the reason why I got 3 unsuccessful fellowships, I think that was okay. I wasn't ready. The project wasn't ready. And the fact that I had 2 years to really improve my skills and learn more, publish more, and really develop my own career path. That helped a lot in terms of then getting a successful fellowship.
Yeah, that's really interesting. This idea of kind of that sometimes you've got to fail in order to succeed. I think it's a common problem that we have in academia is this idea of when to apply to things. I think some people never feel ready or you don't want to apply too soon. Have you any advice for people kind of just coming out of their PhD on if they're kind of on the fence about applying to a fellowship? Would you recommend they go for it even if they might not have the experience or to wait it out in a different role?
I think it really depends. It depends on the type of project, what is considering hot topic in terms of funding schemes, and it's also a matter of the groups you are approaching or where you want to move or with whom you are planning to do the project you are considering for the fellowship, and unfortunately, it's also a matter of luck. So sometimes, there are several rounds of grants during the year for a number of charities or funders. And sometimes you just get maybe too many fantastic applications and you are unlucky because you are like number 4 and they're only able to fund 3. Maybe if you apply just 6 months after or 6 months before, then, no one else is applying and you get a better chance. So sometimes we need to remember that it's also a matter of luck and not just skills. So I feel like, first of all, if you don't apply, you don't get. So that's number 1 rule. So you cannot get a fellowship or a studentship if you don't apply. But it's also good to remember that the more you work on the application, the more feedback you get, the more you improve your writing skills. So I think as soon as you have an idea and you have a project in mind, I think it's good to start writing and get feedback. And then when you feel you are ready, just submitting it.
Yeah, a kind of common theme of across the kind of career spectrum is don't be afraid to show your work to other people because that feedback can be a really critical part of success. So I guess the obvious next question is, so your successful fellowship, what was it about? What was your research on and what is it on today?
So the fellowship is funded by Alzheimer Society, which is an amazing charity. Also think like it was destiny that I was funded by them. I feel like they are the perfect funders for what I want to do and my research. They are really keen in bringing sort of the side of research together with people living with dementia or their carers. So there is this very strong link between what researchers do and what it really means living with dementia. And I feel like I'm learning a lot by having this sort of this opportunity to work closely with monitors and volunteers within the Alzheimer Society. So the project is about trying and to identify markers in the brain in genetic forms of frontotemporal dementia. So what I do is using MRI, brain scans, and I look at very small areas of the brain and I see and I try to identify whether there are changes and how big these changes are, how fast these changes are happening, how they can characterize the different forms of frontotemporal dementia, and how they are linked with the development of the symptoms, with the overall idea that perhaps I could contribute to having a better understanding of what's happening in the brain in frontotemporal dementia, and probably helping with marker for clinical trials and for diagnosis and prognosis in a way.
That's really interesting. And is that something that you anticipate will continue indefinitely? What comes kind of in the next 5 years, do you think? Will you continue with the biomarkers with MRI, or are you going to see research branching out a little bit?
Oh, that's a very job interview question. Like that.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years' time. So I feel like at some point would be good to have treatment and work more on treatment. And by treatment, I mean either drug that works and hopefully slow down and hold the symptoms of dementia, but also working on sort of neuropsychological rehabilitation or support for people currently living with dementia. So we always hope that, in 5 years, we do have a drug that actually works for everyone. And my plan is to try and identify changes that we can see at the level of the single person. So being able, hopefully one day, to say, okay, this is the person, we need to have really targeted and personalized therapeutic intervention or psychological rehabilitation intervention to this specific person. So this is where I'm aiming for the next 5 years. Maybe 10.
Maybe 10, maybe longer. Oh, amazing. No, that's really interesting to hear. And it's obvious you're really kind of passionate and enthusiastic about what you do, which is always really nice to see. What do you think kind of motivates you through when, the MRI isn't scanning properly or the analysis code isn't working? What's your kind of motivation behind your research?
Yeah, spending hours looking at things and then the script is not working or I cannot find anything. I think what really drives me are, the curiosity of trying to crack a question and try to hunt for an answer, which is kind of curiosity in science overall. But also the feeling that, we are a group of people working together at the very end to try and solve a big problem, which is dementia. And I know I won't save the world, but I've been trained and I've studied and I have a little bit of knowledge, and I really want to convey and help as much as I can with what I'm able to do in order to, help in this quest for finding a cure for dementia. So this is kind of what really drives me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the truth for a lot of us, right, is this idea of individually we might not be able to solve any big problems, but collectively as a group, it's amazing to see how far the field of dementia has come, even the last, 5-10 years. So what do you think are some of the kind of day-to-day challenges that you face that a budding dementia researcher should be aware of?
Fundings, being able to get project approved and get fundings to do the research we want to do. Then there is lots of diplomacy and trying to get people to work together, which sometimes is difficult. And trying to have an idea or trying to have a project or trying to have a research that will really have an impact on people living with dementia. So, sometimes it's amazing looking at brain scans. Sometimes it's great running analysis. But at the end of the day, it's trying of why, reminding ourselves why we are really doing that. I think that's what should kind of be the end point and kind of, okay, let's reconvey and why are we doing this, sort of, rather than just doing research for the fun of doing research.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when you ask researchers kind of what the biggest challenges they face are. It's very rarely the research itself, but rather kind of everything around it, like you say, of the funding, of kind of interpersonal collaborations and communication, and keeping sight of that kind of bigger picture. So I guess my last question after this lovely romp through your CV is, looking back, is there anything that you'd change?
So many things.
It's just me and you.
No one is listening to this.
No.
So a number of things, but it's always easy when you look back and you know how things have gone and sort of, I should have done that. So it's always kind of easy looking back and say, I'll change this and that. Probably I would be more vocal and I would be more sort of asking for things. And I would have do much more networking early on. Sometimes I felt like, I'm just a research assistant. I cannot go and talk to professor or to, because I'm a no one. And then I felt like I lost opportunity. And I feel like people are always really happy to talk about their research and sharing what they know. So probably I would have started networking much earlier.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. It's definitely something that's difficult to do when you're on your own, especially at a conference. I always refer to it as being like a debutante in the period drama. I always feel like I need someone to come and help introduce me to all these people I don't know. But yeah, having that confidence to kind of go up to people and say, hey, like, I really love your research, I think it's really awesome. And obviously now not only are you a researcher, but you're also a lecturer teaching other people about the subject. So what part of kind of your job now most excites you, kind of with that teaching component built in?
So I really love teaching. It's something that I always kind of have there at the back of my mind. And on the side, I kind of train, and I've been awarded the fellowship from the Higher Education Academy in the UK, because I wanted to I wanted to have this sort of training and really approach teaching with, a proper foundation, not just, I'll just go and teach something. So knowing how to do it, knowing the different approaches and techniques. So it's fun now because I'm teaching now at the undergraduate level of psychology, and kind of remind me when I was much younger, and sort of, I'm trying to be someone that I wish I had when I was younger. And it's fun to try and convey things that now I know because it's been X amount of years that I study things. But it's kind of encountering some concepts for the very first time and trying to make it fun, and trying to at least share a bit of the passion and the joy of doing research and talking about dementia and talking about the brain and talking about cognition. So that's fun, trying to prepare the lectures and having that at the back of my mind.
Yeah, I think it's always a really strong motivation for me, and the little teaching that I've done, like you say, is being that role model that I wish I had when I was younger. So I think there's no greater motivation than that for teaching, is there? So now that we know about your career, from your early PhD work all the way up to teaching you do now, it's time to get some speedy career and life tips from Dr. Martina Bocchetta. So in this part of the show, we're going to have some quick fire career questions, short, snappy answers. Martina, are you ready?
Yeah, put my headphone on, ready.
All right. What's one thing you wish someone had told you when you were at the career stage that I am currently?
Believe in yourself, network as much as you can, and talk to people. Yes.
Talk to people all the time. I'm quite introverted myself. I often find that difficult. What habits have you found to help you to be more productive? Making list with sub-lists, and then just tick when you finish a task. So even if you've done a little, at the end of the day, you will have a couple of ticks, and that will feel like you progressed. And I feel like also planning for plan B, C, D, and Z, it's also helpful. I love that. List within list within lists is how I'm surviving through my PhD so far. Are there any good books or podcasts you can suggest to help listeners thinking about their career? Other than this one, obviously. Obviously, Dementia Researcher. I don't know if you heard about Dementia Researcher. I don't know, but no. Yeah, they kind of do some podcasts in the field. I wouldn't know in terms of books, but there are a couple of podcasts. I think one is called The Curious Case of Rutherford and Fry, and one is The Infinite Monkey Cage. They are not necessary on neuroscience research or dementia research, but the way they explain science in a very lay way and in a very kind of enthusiastic and engaging things, I think it's helpful, because at the end of the day, either you are presenting your research or writing a grant, you want to tell a story. So learning some of the things that you enjoy there might be helpful for your research side of things. Yeah, I really like that. One of my favourite books is Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, which is one of the first ones I think I read before I started my undergraduate degree. And they say that idea of kind of storytelling and being able to turn science into something kind of entertaining to get people's attention is a really great skill to have. Talking of skills, which leadership skills were the most difficult, do you think, for you to develop? Being assertive
Definitely one. And trying to improve my self-confidence. That's something that, and it's very typical of women, actually.
Yeah. Do you have any tips on how to do that, or is it still something you're working through yourself?
Still working on it. But at the end of the day, I feel like everyone is different and everyone has different skills and way to approach leadership. And there is not a style that fits for all. So it's kind of getting to know our weaknesses and our strengths and then work on them. And yeah. That's what I'm trying to say, you know, I won't be good at doing this, and that, but I'm actually capable of doing this. So, yeah,
exactly. A bit of self-reflection and kind of, I think it's easy for you to amplify that voice in your head, which says, oh, you're not good at this and this. But like you say, kind of challenging that with, I might not be good at those things, but I am good at these things. I think is a really helpful way to think about it. We touched on this with your fellowships, but how do you deal with failure or rejection in your career?
Badly. Apart from, you know, the feeling of, oh my God, I'm not capable of doing anything. It's kind of taking a step back, considering that it's not personal, and rationalize it, and then try to use it as a learning opportunity. So there might be feedback. So another point is getting as much feedback as possible, even on failure or rejection, and use that to understand how you can improve the next move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, taking that step back, and whenever I've had something massive in my career or in life generally, I think looking out the window and seeing that the birds are still chirping and everyone else is still going about with their daily lives reminds you that the world has not ended, and this too shall pass.
No, I just wanted to add, there is also another thing, which is we should all normalize failure, because every single one of us encounters some failure, from the big professor to the, you know, students. It's normal, and we should talk more about that. So
it's like publishing null results. I feel like you have to say, as well as when you did things well, sometimes, like you say, normalizing that. Yeah, I put this in, but I got desk rejected. Oh, well, it's good generally for the academic community. Absolutely. So we've mentioned already that being kind of assertive and that self-confidence might particularly be a problem in women in neuroscience. So what do you think it takes to be a successful woman in neuroscience, as you are?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think we should have very big shoulders, first of all. And I think the other thing that work should be having a big network, or a good network of support among women. So women should support women. And I think that works for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I think it's seeing other women and what they're doing is a really great way to inspire and motivate me, because there's just some amazing research going on at the minute. As we saw on International Women's Day, when various organisations kind of put a spotlight on women in their society, it was really great to see. And what skills in general have been, do you think, most beneficial to you as a researcher?
Organization and planning, then observing and listening. So one of the things is that, you know, you get opportunity to attend conferences or to listen to big names or amazing researcher. Just follow them and try to understand what you like about them and replicate what they are doing, in a sense of understand what works for you and what you like to do. And then probably empathy as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's it. That was the last one. So let me recap then on the main takeaways there. So I think generally, let me say, we've covered these skills of listening being a really big part of our job, both in terms of empathizing with other researchers and other people, but also seeking out those role models, listening out for other women or generally people in STEM who are doing work that you'd like to be doing, and learning how to emulate those people, as well as listening out for feedback, be it on a success or on a failure or rejection, to kind of help us improve in future and remind ourselves that the world does in fact move on. I think we've seen the importance of mentors as well as supervisors in a big way. So thank you very much, Martina, for all your wonderful little snippets of advice.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. And you summarize it much better than me. So amazing. Thank you.
We're now in the last segment of the show, and before we finish, we just want to talk a little bit about mentoring itself. We've touched on it here and there, but this section is explicitly focused on that mentoring. So Martina, what is it that made you decide to be a mentor? And is there any advice that you'd give for anyone listening who doesn't have a mentor as amazing as you?
So I think if you don't have a mentor, get one. This could be via a formal initiative or by approaching someone that you consider a role model or someone who might be senior than you in your institute or even in your network or even someone that you find on Twitter. And it's really important and it really helps a lot. And it helped me a lot as a mentee. And it also helps me as a mentor because, the opportunity of sharing the little bit I have and trying to imagine how I was a few years ago and what I needed at the time. And, might not make a huge difference, but the idea of normalizing and showing people that, everyone is a different person and we need to identify what works for us. And there is not one thing that fits for all. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a common thing that I've heard from mentors is I'm not sure if I'm making a difference. And in fact, there were statistics at the Alzheimer's Research UK conference of how many mentees thought that mentors had made a massive difference for them versus how many mentors thought they'd made a massive difference. And there was this huge discrepancy in the statistics. So I'd like to confirm, Martina, you have made a massive difference to my academic career, even if it doesn't feel like it. You mentioned you've also been a mentee at times. So thinking like very practically, how do you prepare for a mentoring meetings, both now as a mentor, but also past as a mentee?
As a mentee, I tend to, again, write down list, very important, and try to imagine what I want to achieve in a year time, 2 years time, whatever it's my 5 years plan of the future. And understand what I think I need or how to get there and just ask for suggestion or even for ideas for networking or opportunities and asking that to my mentor. For a mentor or as a mentor, I think it's more about getting into the listening mode and just shut up, not what I'm doing today, talking a lot. But it's about really listening to the needs of the mentee and supporting where I can and sharing similar experience that I might have go through.
Yeah, fantastic. And is there anything you would say to people who might be on the fence about becoming a mentor to push them into becoming a mentor themselves?
It's such a rewarding experience. You get to talk to amazing people like you, Rebecca, and you get to learn a lot from people, and it's kind of boosting your confidence and again, probably go back in time and talking to the younger version of yourself and helping in a way to what things have worked and things that may have not worked exactly and help someone else. So it's very good.
Amazing. So if you needed any inspiration or a note that you should go and get yourself a mentor or become a mentor yourself, then this is it. Like Martina said, either through formal schemes like the Alzheimer's Research UK mentoring scheme or informally through Twitter or through people at work. It can be a really rewarding experience from both sides of the equation. So some very last questions that aren't mentor related. These are the ones that I think people are really going to want the answers for. So if someone was playing you in a movie of your life, who would you want it to be and why?
So I have to think of someone sort of, someone will kill me, awkward and funny, and I hope someone witty. So I might go for someone like Miranda Hart or Olivia Colman. I hope they don't get offended. I really have huge respect for them. So
I think that's a great idea. I think that's an excellent combination. I can very much see Olivia Colman saying yes to that call. And the last one, if you couldn't be a researcher, what would you be instead?
Ooh. So I personally think I couldn't be anything else. Apart from that, I might go for sort of hospitality sector, cooking and hosting, like bed and breakfast or something. At the end of the day, I'm still Italian, so I have to go for that.
Nice. I think a neuroscience themed bed and breakfast could work really, really well in Italy. I've not researched it, but I'm pretty sure that is a niche that has not been tapped into yet.
Let's work on that.
Next mentoring meeting.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank my amazing mentor and guest, Dr. Martina Bocchetta, for joining us again. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. And everyone, please try to become a mentor and trying to find a mentor if you need one.
And if you'd like to find out more about Martina and her work, you'll find her and my bio on the Dementia Researcher website. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much to Alzheimer's Research UK for bringing us together. I think hopefully we've shown throughout the course of this podcast just how much it means to have mentor and mentee relationships. And the Ask Your Mentor podcast will be back soon with another mentee talking to their mentor. But for now, I'm off to go and plan my career based on all those amazing tips that Martina's just given us. I'm going to go write lists within lists within lists. I'm Rebecca Williams, and you've been listening to the Ask the Mentor podcast from Dementia Researcher in association with Alzheimer's Research UK.